Welcome back to our third episode of season 2 already for Collaborative Conversations. Thank you so much for joining us again. I am Dave Plow, and I am joined by the director of the IU IPE Center, Dr. Barbara Maxwell. How are you doing today,
Hi,
Barbara?
everyone. Glad to be with you, Dave.
I'm glad to have you here, especially since we're speaking with two guys that you are more familiar with than I am. I've worked with Ted for, well, years now at this point. I think it's been 2 years, so I can say that plural. But Rick is relatively new to me and new to the center. And today they're going to be talking a little bit about Rick's journey. He has become something of a patient voice for us, right?
Yeah, Rick actually reached out to us last year with an idea that he would love to be a patient advocate for the centre, and anything that he could do to help us with our work is what he was interested in doing. So we've had conversations with Rick Phillips several times, and different members of our team in the centre have been working with Rick on different projects. So this is one of them. Rick has lived a lifetime with type 1 diabetes and rheumatoid arthritis, and so has a beautiful lived experience to share about his journey through life with both of these conditions, and also a beautiful way in which he talks about the history of why he wants to be an advocate, why he wants to lend that patient voice, and the different work that he has been doing for many, many years, doing that both in educational spaces, organizations that work with diabetes and rheumatoid arthritis, and also as patient participant in research and a patient advocate in research. So he talks beautifully about, his lived experience and his mother's type 1 diabetes and some significant changes that have happened over time. And to see him interviewed by Ted Meyer, Ted is, for me, a master in interviewing people. He's just a natural at it. And Ted is artist in residence at the Keck School of Medicine and an artist patient advocate himself. And he does a beautiful job of just speaking with people about their lived experience. In this podcast, he's talking with Rick about Rick's lived experience, but Ted also has a lived experience with chronic disease as well. And so we will at some point be capturing that too. So it's wonderful to get these two people who are very passionate about the importance of healthcare providers actually being really effective with their communication, listening particularly to the expertise that they have in their own conditions. And that is a hard thing for healthcare providers to do because we often think we have the expertise, but they have significant expertise and often more expertise than the people that they're encountering from the health side on their particular conditions. And so it's really lovely to be able to have these two voices to help us as healthcare providers understand what it is to really be person-centered and what it is to really have to listen and attest to their expertise.
Yes. I really don't have much to add to that except because you said it so well. But I do want to point out before we start rolling that this is planned to be episode 1 of 2 between Ted and Rick. The conversation is deep and it's pretty long, and there's just so much rich information in here that Rick shares and that Ted's able, as you said, he's a master interviewer. He's very good. He was able to pull a lot out. So we do end up with 2 episodes of this. So we'll be splitting this into part 1 and part 2. This is part 1. Part 2 will be coming in a week. So with that in mind, we're going to let Ted take it away.
Thank you both for the introduction. So you know who's who. I am Ted Meyer, and I am in Joshua Tree, California.
And I'm Rick Phillips. I'm in Noblesville, Indiana.
Hey, Rick. So we are here to talk about you and what you're going through and how you're dealing with it. So I'm going to start with a couple facts, some about you and some about illness in general. So You were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1974 and rheumatoid arthritis in the year 2000. So you 2 for 1. You got 2 for 1.
Yeah, I
Uh,
also have ankylosing spondylitis. So I really have three for one. I tell my doctors I'm trying to get to 5 before I leave this earth. So I'm really looking for number 4 right now.
it's not a contest. There's there's no wager. You can stop at 3. You can stop at 3. All right. So I just want to do a couple facts for people that are watching and might not know how many people are affected by this. So in the most recent year, 2024, 38.4 million people in the United States had diabetes. That's about 1 in 10 adults. And 1.3 million people have rheumatoid arthritis, which is 0.6 of the population. And you are in the special group of 20% of those people that have both. So congratulations on that.
Cha-ching.
Yeah. So let's talk about your condition a little bit. What's your daily routine? How do you take care of yourself? How many pills do you have to take a day? What exercises? Whatever you can think of.
Oh, geez. I take 26 or 7 pills per day.
Wow.
I tell my doctors I only take pills twice per day, once in the morning and once in the evening. And we have to schedule around that. So if they want to give me a midday pill, we have to find something else. I usually get up first in this house, and so I usually get up and do some writing, have my breakfast, take some pills, and I usually go back to sleep for a little bit. We almost always walk in the afternoon. We try to walk a mile to a mile and a half each day. We have a park that we just love to go to, and we know some of the wildlife over there and plenty of the dogs. And then we have dinner, and I usually come back and do some more writing or homework. I am still in school and probably always will be. And
What classes you're taking?
so right now I'm studying to be a lay minister at Phillips Seminary in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I have my doctorate of education from Nova Southeastern, and I have bachelor's and master's from IU in public administration. So I've lived a full academic life, and I do like being in school, and I'm going to like being out this time.
So how does this all manifest for you? How bad is the arthritis? Do you still have movement in your hands? And how much of it and the diabetes and how much is controlled by these 26 pills a day?
A lot of the arthritis is controlled by the 26 pills. I also use a drug called Rucinex, which is a infusion that I have every 4 months. So between the infusion and the pills, my rheumatoid arthritis is fairly well controlled, except when it's not. And what can happen periodically is, for whatever reason, things will just go completely off the rails. And the only thing to do when that happens is to, in my opinion, what I do is try to exercise more when I'm feeling just awful. The surest way to get back to doing okay is to walk more or ride my bike more, or I just have got to pull out and keep going. Because if I give in, if I just say, I'm going to sit down here and feel better, then it's like a cascade. It just overwhelms you. And the only thing I know to do is keep going. I can't.
I've got the same thing that we got this really big dog, and I have pretty bad legs, and a lot of times I would like to sit, but the dog will not let me sit. When he wants to go out, I've got to bring
Yeah.
him, and I'm really grateful that he forces me to get up sometimes and move when I'd probably just rather be a little sedentary.
Yeah. I mean, I've got my wife in the diabetes community. We call people who are your partner a type 3 diabetic. She does not have diabetes, but we call her type 3 because she is the one who will oftentimes say, we got to get up, we got to get going. We have to do this for blood sugar. We have to do this for arthritis. We have to do this because we have to do it. And I've had diabetes now almost 51 years. Cheryl and I have been married 48. And I'm positive that the only reason that I've made it this far is because of Cheryl.
See? Perfect reason to get married. Other than Cheryl, I'm always interested in people like you who have conditions like this and then sort of make a positive out of it. You're a writer, you perform, you've got a blog, you're an advocate. And I'm always amazed by the number of people that have sort of chronic illnesses that rather than sort of cloister up at home, they go out and try to help other people. Is that something you learned through all this to give out, or were you always that kind of person? And what do you get from sharing your story to everybody?
Well, it actually started when I was a kid, well before I had diabetes. My mom had type 1 diabetes back in the 60s. Actually, it started even before I was born. My aunt had type 1 diabetes in 1947, and she lived until 1950. She had the disease at age 7. She died at age 10. My mom was diagnosed in 62. She died in 86. And all the time when I was growing up, because there really weren't people who understood diabetes in the community, my mom would babysit kids. Their moms would need to have a day out or need to go to the doctor or something. So I had to pray to kids through my life that had type 1 diabetes. And it really gave me the sense that community is better than not having community. And I know that the kids that came to my house benefited from my mom's understanding of type 1 diabetes, and some of them continue to be my friends.
How's the treatment changed in the last 50 years? I mean, I assume maybe now you're wearing one of those things that automatically gives it to you, whereas before you had to
Yeah,
be on the clock for shots. How did it start and how is it now?
it's phenomenal. Again, I'll point to my mom. My mom was in a early pump study back in 1972, and the pump, the insulin pump at that time, was as big as a cart. If you were picked to be on the pump, you had to push this cart around the hospital. My mom was a control subject, so I got to see what the pump looked like, and I got to see the impracticability of what that pump looked like. And today, this is my pump.
It's amazing.
And, this is what controls it. And I probably look at this controller 100 times a day. And what is so impactful about it is that every time I look at that, I see my mom. My mom had a little piece of that pump. She didn't create it, she didn't perfect it. But without people like her, that pump would not be here today. She has a little piece of that, and I get to see that little piece of it. So I asked my mom when she was in the pump study, right after the pump study, I said, "Mom, why do you do something like that?" I said, "Because that's so impractical." And she said, "I'm not doing it for me. I will probably never live to see that pump, but I'm doing it for you, or I'm doing it for you or your children's children. Someday, somebody in this line is going to have an insulin pump, and they're going to say, 'My grandmother, my great grandmother, my mother stood up and helped bring this to market.'" And she just really engaged me to think that that is our responsibility. It's our responsibility with anything that we can do to help future generations, because I know how much I'm benefiting from her and other people's contributions.
Yeah, and I think right now with all the budget cuts for research, I mean, that's this whole idea of taking funding away that's gonna help future generations. It's to me, it's I I I understand there's another side to this argument, but to me, it just seems criminal to stop a lot of these tests that have been going on,
Well,
for
I'll tell you
years and
that.
are gonna help
I'll
people.
I'll tell you that there's a 30-plus year diabetes study administered by Columbia, funded by the federal government. We have brought type 1 diabetes research so far forward in those 30 years that Columbia has been administering this program. And they have been told to shut it down. And all of that, all the subjects, all the data, everything that was in that is immense jeopardy right now. This is the backbone study of type 1 diabetes research in the world. It affects kids. It affects kids and adults in Indiana. It affects kids at Riley Hospital. And whatever the beef is with Columbia, kids at Riley Hospital had no part in it.
Yeah, so I have something called Gaucher's disease, which is enzyme deficiency. I gave bone marrow when I was 6 years old, and I did not get the drug until I was 42.
Uh,
And that's how long these people toil away sometimes to help us, and they dedicate their lives to it. It anyway, I could go on forever. I want to focus on you. So,
it's just to say that there is a responsibility that was instilled by my mom for future generations. Long before I had diabetes, she was looking down the road, and mom was not alive when the pump was brought to market. She never got the benefit of that, but she saw a day that others would benefit, and she was willing to undergo that medical testing, and it's just something that she instilled in me.
well, this leads us right to the next question of your advocacy for people, and you do it in a number of different ways. You've got a pretty extensive blog that has personal essays about your illness, but it also has basic information for people who have diabetes or rheumatoid arthritis. So you're getting facts out that way. There's videos online of you telling stories about it. You write. So that's a little bit of your mom coming through that, helping other people.
Well, I always say that the blog in particular, whatever I write and whatever I blog is really for me. It's really for me to exercise the emotional part of these diseases. When I was first diagnosed, I really was angry about it. And I was angry for a very long time. It finally got to the point where I had to seek psychological help in order to continue to manage diabetes in particular. One of the things that came out of that was, it's not appropriate to keep these things bottled up. It's more appropriate to let it out. And that's true. And so that's the reason I started the blog. And that's the reason I became more public with disease. And that's the reason I really enjoy doing it. And it's led me in all different kinds of ways that I never dreamed was possible, and I'm very excited about that.
When I was, I've found that over the years I have different ways of getting my frustration. Like when I was younger and a little more athletic, when I was really upset, I'd go to the batting range just so I could hit stuff. And now I'm like you, I tend to write. So let's talk a little bit about some of the stories on your blog. So I wrote you had some back surgery because of
Right.
the arthritis. So you wrote a piece about your adventures in back surgery, but there was one you wrote sticky buttons, and it was really about the fact that your fingers swell up. So a lot of this new technology you can't always access because your fingers are big and you miss spellings and things like that. And that's the story in the blog that really spoke to me because I find that the bigger pains that I have or the fatigue that are constant, I've learned to deal with, but it's the little days when like my fingers don't work or I get up and maybe my balance isn't as great, that the stuff that comes and goes, like the little minutia is the stuff that's always like you're still sick. You're still, and I just really related to that little piece, like this one little annoyance thrown in on top of everything else sometimes is just that line where you're like, oh, I'm sick of it.
Yeah, I told Cheryl the other day, I said, I am so sick of being sick. I really am. I'm sick of being sick. But
The alternative is not good either, though.
as she said, what choice do you have?
Yeah.
What choice do you have except to keep going forward and hopefully do it with humor, bring a smile to other people, and be deadly serious when we're talking about some topics that are more community in nature. For instance, if we're talking about Medicare access to continuous glucose monitors, which we were 2.5 years ago, that's a deadly serious issue. And I tried to be as out front on that as humanly possible. On the other hand, talking to my doctor and having a good laugh, I refuse to have a doctor who won't laugh with me. And setting that as a standard is something that makes my life more bearable.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Rick, for this conversation. Again, I want to point out this is part 1 of 2. So we have another part coming with Rick, and that'll be next week in our next episode. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, awesome. Come back. You'll hear more for Rick. He's going to get a little more in depth on his own care, the experiences that he's had, good and bad experiences with healthcare. And again, just thank you both for being a part of this.
I just wanted to say that here at the IU Interprofessional Practice and Education Center, we think it's incredibly important that our learners actually hear from real people, that they hear the voices and the stories and the lived experience and the expertise. And I think what you hear when Rick speaks about his experiences and his life is that significant expertise in his own disease and how that disease impacts him. And when he steps into care, if we fail to listen to that, we are not going to do as well as we could if we just follow his lead. So a huge thanks to Rick for kind of sharing and making that so apparent.
And again, if you want to hear more from the patients, because we have been trying to give the patients a voice, or our students or our faculty, you can follow us on social media, LinkedIn, the Interprofessional Practice and Education Center. And you could follow us on our website, ipe.iu.edu.
And make sure you visit us for the next podcast.